let's talk about failure. Failure is a really uncomfortable concept. I have a bumper sticker that says failure is not an option. And when I was making Acid Test, the feature film, that was kind of my mantra. Failure is not an option. And I was kind of white knuckling that production the entire time, just kind of forcing it, or really just in the lead up to production, getting it funded, getting everything ready. Once we were in production, I think things kind of started moving of their own accord, but I felt so much like I was just forcing it to happen. And this idea of failure is a really big one for me and maybe for you. I know a lot of us are perfectionists, and we want to do things right. We want to do things, you know, perfect. And especially when we get into things like editing and the tweaking and like just the nuance of everything. And is it this frame or that frame? Like, there's an OCD nature to the perfectionism that many of us experience as filmmakers. And so this idea of failing, of it not working, of it, and especially with all the people that it takes to shoot something and to put it out there. What is this concept of failure? Is it on us alone or not? I mean, like, logically, you would say failure doesn't really exist, in the sense that if you bring all these people together and you make something, there is something of value in it. The other reality is that failure happens to a certain extent all the time. You submit an application to a grant, you uh, put your film in for festivals, all the competitive nature, the competitions, the selection, the curation, all of that stuff. We are constantly getting rejected, you know, being told, no, we're not going to fund that, we're not going to do this, sorry, this isn't quite right for us. There's so many different polite ways, and even nonverbal ways that people reject or say no to you. And to a certain extent, those are all mini failures. And when you look at tech people, there's this phrase that you often hear, which is like fail often, fail early, fail often, something like that, where you want to have as many chances at bat, so to speak. You want to just pick yourself up and keep going and keep going and keep going, and something eventually, the average out of all those hits is going to amount to something. I once had an executive, a high level executive, who had made amazing films that I loved, say something like he failed 90% of the time in all of his career, which is kind of an extraordinary concept when you have the films that he has made, that he has launched, that are these, big, iconic, amazing films. And to think about all the films that he didn't make in that period of time is kind of stunning and slightly depressing. But these are like two things that are kind of both true. You have to have a mentality that failure is not an option, because that is what keeps you going. But there's also the reality that you will be failing often along this journey, because that's just the way that it is. Things are never going to be smooth sailing. It's never going to be a straight road. It's never going to be clear. you know and so I find that such an interesting kind of contradictory approach, because the stress and anxiety that I felt to not be a failure when I set out to do my first feature film, I feel completely released from in this second feature. I mean, I still don't want to fail in the second feature, I eventually want to make it, but it's been a much harder road. It's been a much bigger lift. It's been more complicated, for various reasons. And so it becomes not about like, did I fail on this project, but when is the right time? Who are the right people? What are the right circumstances? How are we going to put it together? And I might need to take it off the front burner and try and figure something else out in order to kind of get back to it. And those are all the kind of problem solving things that you need to have when coming into this industry. And again, I don't know how to absolve anybody else or release anybody else from that fear and anxiety of thinking of themselves as a failure, that this project is a failure, because I needed to go through it. I needed to get through the first one and to realize like, oh, okay, well, this wouldn't have been the worst case in the world, but I was able to get it done, so I have that benefit. But looking back on it and seeing all the things that kind of didn't work out along the way that still resulted in me getting this project off the ground, it's just something that I've been keeping in mind, because somebody else recently posted a statistic that was something like 70% of all filmmakers never make their second or third feature. That they make one and then it's just so much harder. It just is so difficult to get to the next one. And I think if you have this kind of thought, this negative kind of, oh, the statistics are against you. I mean, this industry is full of statistics that are against you. So you're already choosing rejection and failure by going into this industry. But somebody asked me recently, like, are you still optimistic in the face of these horrible statistics, or, you know, um, the, and I was kind of like, you have to be. I mean, again, if you want to pursue this very hard and rejection filled industry, you have to always have hope that you will succeed at some point. And you have to love and enjoy the journey along the way and be interested by these challenges that are presenting themselves, that are frustrating, yes, but also puzzles to be solved. How do you figure out how to do this? And I think, as soon as you lose hope or optimism in your own career, I mean, you might as well quit. You're done, because this is, why would you do this otherwise? So I think that also comes back to the idea of like finding your why, and what are the stories that you want to tell that only you can tell, and all that stuff. But again, this idea of failure is not an option. You will have to fail early and often along the way, and how those two coexist in the life of a filmmaker.